Tokyo, Japan, June 8, 1942. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, sat in his austere office at Naval Headquarters, studying preliminary reports from the Midway disaster that had arrived in the last 48 hours. 4 aircraft carriers sunk: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. The backbone of the Kido Butai, the mobile strike group that had destroyed Pearl Harbor 6 months earlier, was at the bottom of the Pacific. It was devastating tactical defeat without doubt. But Yamamoto, brilliant mathematician before Admiral, was calculating. Japan had begun the war with 10 aircraft carriers, the largest and most modern carrier fleet in the world. After Midway, it still had 6 operational: Shokaku, Zuikaku, Junyo, Hyo, Ryujo, Zuiho. The Americans, 3: Enterprise, Hornet, and Saratoga when it returned from repairs. The mathematics were clear: 6 against 3. 2-to-1 advantage still favored Japan, and aircraft carriers didn't grow on trees. They took 2 to 3 years to build, required sophisticated technology, specialized shipyards, and massive resources. If Japan maintained operational pressure for 18 months, the small American fleet would be systematically exhausted before new ships could arrive. Yamamoto summoned his staff and declared with calculated conviction, "We lost 4 carriers at Midway, but the Americans have only 3 operational in the entire Pacific. Building aircraft carriers takes years. If we maintain constant operational pressure, their fleet will be exhausted before new ships can replace losses. Industrial time is on our side." The officers present nodded, relieved. The mathematics were comforting. What Yamamoto didn't know was that while he was calculating construction times based on traditional Japanese and European naval methods, the Americans were completely reinventing the very nature of naval construction, transforming warships from artisanal projects taking years into assembly line products taking weeks. American aircraft carrier production wasn't naval construction in any sense that Japanese admirals understood. It was radical industrialization, pragmatic brutalization of naval engineering, application of Henry Ford's automotive techniques to war at sea. The Americans wouldn't build ships. They would manufacture entire fleets faster than Japan could sink them, transforming each Japanese tactical victory into statistical irrelevance. The temporal advantage Yamamoto calculated so carefully was complete illusion, mirage that would disappear in months when American industrial reality manifested itself in avalanche of steel hulls carrying aircraft. Japan was about to be buried not by better admirals or better ships, but by shipyards operating 24 hours producing aircraft carriers like automobiles. The mathematics of industrial disparity were already being written in shipyard contracts and production orders that no Japanese officer could imagine existing at necessary scale. The United States would produce 141 aircraft carriers during World War II, 24 Essex-class fleet carriers of 27,000 tons each, 9 Independence-class light carriers of 11,000 tons converted from light cruisers, and 122 escort carriers of Casablanca, Bogue, Sangamon, and Commencement Bay classes. Japan, mobilizing all existing industrial capacity under total war economy, would produce 18 aircraft carriers during entire war. Americans produced nearly 8 times more carriers than Japan, and still supplied 38 additional escort carriers to British Royal Navy through Lend-Lease. The numerical disparity was so extreme, it defied all logic of naval warfare known since Trafalgar. But raw production numbers tell only half the devastating story. The other half lay in construction speed, and here American industrial revolution created reality that Japanese considered physically impossible. Essex-class fleet carriers, sophisticated warships of 27,000 tons carrying 90 aircraft, took 18 to 24 months from Kiel to launch at Newport News, Norfolk Navy Yard, New York Naval Shipyard, Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and Fore River Shipyard. This was impressive time compared to Japanese 30 to 36 months. But escort carriers built by Henry Kaiser were completely different. 3 to 6 months from Kiel to launch. USS Casablanca, CVE-55, lead ship of its class, was built in only 112 days. less than 4 months. At absolute peak production in 1944, Kaiser Shipyards in Vancouver, Washington, and Richmond, California launched one complete escort carrier, operational and combat-ready, every 5 days. One aircraft carrier per week. Japan, even at its 1942 industrial peak, took 18 to 30 months to build a medium carrier. Replacement rate versus loss rate revealed even more devastating asymmetry. The United States lost 12 aircraft carriers during entire Pacific War. 4 fleet carriers, USS Lexington at Coral Sea, USS Yorktown at Midway, USS Hornet at Santa Cruz, USS Princeton at Leyte, 1 light carrier, USS Princeton, and 7 escort carriers to various causes including kamikaze attacks, submarines, and surface action. 12 ships lost of 141 produced, 8.5% loss rate. Japan sank these ships at devastating cost of aircraft, irreplaceable experienced pilots and resources. But for each American carrier sunk, 3 to 4 new ones were launched in following months. Japan lost 21 aircraft carriers during war, more than its total production because losses included pre-war carriers from initial fleet, and couldn't replace them. Japanese loss rate exceeded 100% of wartime production. Strategic impact of this industrial disparity was mathematically inevitable and temporally accelerated. After Midway in June 1942, Japan never again had numerical superiority in aircraft carriers. By January 1943, only 7 months after Midway, United States already operated 8 fleet carriers in Pacific versus 4 Japanese. By January 1944, 15 American fleet and light carriers versus 3 Japanese. By January 1945, 1 year before war's end, 28 operational American fleet and light carriers versus 1 Japanese, the obsolete Hosho from 1922. Japanese didn't lose Pacific Air and Naval War because their pilots were inferior or their tactics were flawed. They lost because they were literally buried under avalanche of ships they couldn't sink faster than Americans built, replaced, and multiplied them. Henry Kaiser, the same industrial entrepreneur who had revolutionized Liberty ship merchant production by applying automotive assembly line techniques to naval construction, turned his pragmatic genius to aircraft carriers in 1942. His shipyards in Vancouver, Washington, and Richmond, California would build 50 Casablanca-class escort carriers between April 1943 and July 1944, only 15 months. An average of 1 new operational aircraft carrier every 9 days. At absolute production peak, 1 carrier every 5 days. The technique enabling this impossible speed was deliberate brutalization of traditional naval engineering. Standardized hulls based on C-3 type merchant ship designs, modified to include flight deck, aircraft elevators, and hangars. Entire modules prefabricated at separate facilities, then welded to main hull. Welding instead of traditional riveting, cutting construction time in half. 24-hour shifts with workforce that grew to 90,000 workers, 40% of whom were women with no previous industrial experience, trained in weeks to operate welding and assembly equipment. Absolute standardization meant each Casablanca class was identical to the millimeter, allowing total interchangeability of parts and crews. Each escort carrier cost approximately $8 million to build versus $68 million for an Essex-class fleet carrier. But they carried 28 aircraft, could escort transport convoys protecting them from submarines, support amphibious landings with close air cover, actively hunt submarines with anti-submarine aircraft, and serve as training and aircraft transport carriers. They were adequate for purpose, not perfect, and this adequacy multiplied by 122 units created naval capacity no traditional fleet could match. Japan lacked industrial capacity, technical experience, or resources to replicate this. Their Mitsubishi, Kawasaki, and Kure shipyards operated artisanal methods refined since early 20th century, where each ship was a unique project built by specialized craftsmen over years. The idea of producing aircraft carriers on assembly line like automobiles was incomprehensible to Japanese naval engineers trained in European traditions of shipbuilding. Essex-class fleet carriers represented a different but equally revolutionary approach. They were genuine warships, sophisticated, powerful, 27,000 tons standard displacement, 320 meters length, capacity for 90 to 100 aircraft, adequate armor, extensive anti-aircraft systems, 33 knot speed, but they were designed from beginning for mass production. Standardized components, modular systems, simplified construction techniques where possible without sacrificing operational capability. Result: 18 to 24 months construction versus 36 months or more that equivalent traditional warships required. 24 Essex-class were completed during war, with 14 more launched, but completed after August 1945. Nearly one new powerful fleet carrier every month during production height. Japan managed to complete only 3 fleet carriers during entire war: Taiho, Shinano, and Unryu. 3 versus 24. Disparity wasn't just numerical, it was temporal and industrial. Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, largest naval battle in human history, mathematically proved irrelevance of tactical victories against overwhelming industrial superiority. Imperial Japanese Navy launched Shogo Operation, its last desperate naval offensive, using entire remaining surface fleet in all-or-nothing gamble to destroy American invasion forces in Philippines. 4 Japanese forces converged: Center Force with super battleships Yamato and Musashi, Southern Force with veteran battleships, and Northern Force with 4 aircraft carriers, practically without aircraft, serving as sacrificial decoy. Operation was complete disaster. 4 Japanese carriers sunk: Zuikaku, last survivor of Pearl Harbor, Zuiho, Chitose, and Chiyoda. 3 battleships sunk, including powerful Musashi. Dozens of cruisers and destroyers lost. Essentially, all Japanese aeronaval combat capability permanently eliminated. Americans lost 1 light carrier, USS Princeton, sunk by Japanese dive bomb on October 24th. 2 escort carriers, USS Gambier Bay, sunk by Center Force naval gunfire, and USS St. Lo destroyed by first organized kamikaze attack of war. 3 carriers lost. Within 2 weeks after Leyte, replacement disparity demonstrated absurdity of Japanese tactical victories. 2 new Essex-class were commissioned in November 1944, USS Bonhomme Richard and USS Randolph. 4 new escort carriers entered service. 3 American carriers lost were statistically replaced before Japanese could consolidate Leyte gains. 4 Japanese carriers sunk were never replaced. Never could be. Mathematics were implacable. Sinking American ships was completely useless exercise because new ones appeared faster than old ones could be destroyed. This battle, more than any other, proved modern naval warfare wasn't won by brilliant admirals or superior tactics or even better ships. It was won by shipyards operating 24 hours producing entire fleets, while enemies still celebrated sinking single ship. Japanese documents captured after war reveal growing institutional panic about American construction capacity as reality became undeniable. Naval General Staff Report dated March 1944 stated, "Naval intelligence confirms through multiple sources that Americans now operate 23 fleet and light aircraft carriers in Pacific Theater. 6 months ago, our reports indicated 12. Our own operational carrier fleet reduced from 6 to 4 in same period. They build carriers faster than we can train novice pilots to fight them. Considering declining training quality due to fuel and aircraft shortages, outlook increasingly grim." Another internal document from Combined Naval Command dated August 1944 was even more direct and desperate. Kaiser Shipyards in United States launch 1 complete aircraft carrier approximately every week, according to confirmed intelligence. Our most efficient shipyards require 2 complete years to build medium carrier. No naval strategy, operational tactic, or crew excellence can defeat industrial mathematics of this absolute magnitude. Each carrier we sink through immense sacrifice of pilots and resources is replaced by 3 new ships before we can even celebrate tactical victory. Tragic story of IJN Shinano perfectly encapsulates futility of technical excellence against industrial abundance. After Midway disaster, Imperial Japanese Navy desperately tried compensating carrier losses by converting 3rd Yamato-class superbattleship, already with hull constructed at Yokosuka Shipyards, into world's largest aircraft carrier. Shinano would displace 72,000 tons, carry 47 aircraft plus substantial capacity to refuel other carriers, and have unprecedented armor. It would be invincible. Conversion took nearly 3 complete years, from June 1942 when decision was made until November 1944, when finally launched. 3 years of intensive work by Japan's best naval engineers, consuming resources desperately needed elsewhere, prioritizing this supership over everything else. It was launched November 19, 1944. 10 days later, November 29th, it was sunk by American submarine USS Archerfish on its maiden voyage, transferring from Yokosuka to Kure, before even loading operational aircraft. Sunk by 4 torpedoes from submarine that cost $6 million to build. Those 3 years of Japanese work, representing pinnacle of naval engineering, produced carrier that operated 10 days and never participated in combat. In same 3-year period, Japan spent converting Shinano, June 1942 to November 1944. United States launched 11 Essex-class fleet carriers, 8 Independence-class light carriers, and 96 escort carriers of various classes. Total, 115 operational aircraft carriers added to American fleet in exactly same period Japan produced 1. Irony was devastating beyond words. World's largest individual aircraft carrier, technically superior in armor and theoretical capacity, was buried under literal avalanche of adequate mass-produced American carriers. Each of 115 American carriers was individually inferior to Shinano in multiple technical metrics, but 115 adequate ships operating simultaneously defeated 1 perfect ship every time. Mathematics were inescapable and brutal. Tokyo, Japan, October 20th, 1944. Admiral Suemu Toyoda, Yamamoto's successor as Commander-in-Chief of Combined Fleet after Yamamoto was shot down in April 1943, sat in his office reviewing naval intelligence reports before launching Shogo Operation, Desperate Defense of Philippines. Toyoda, competent and realistic admiral, had no illusions about Japanese capability at this war stage. But numbers in intelligence reports before him destroyed any remaining hope, even of honorable victory. In June 1942, shortly after Midway, Japan had 6 operational aircraft carriers versus 3 American. 2-to-1 advantage. Yamamoto believed time was on Japanese side. In October 1944, 28 months later, Japan had 4 carriers with adequately trained pilots and functional aircraft: Zuikaku, Zuiho, Chitos, Chiyoda. Americans operated 32 fleet and light carriers in Pacific Theater, plus approximately 80 escort carriers available for support, escort, and amphibious support operations. American advantage, approximately 28-to-1. But what most shocked Toyota weren't devastating current numbers, were future projections. Naval intelligence estimated that by March 1945, only 5 months in future, Americans would have 40 or more operational fleet carriers. Japan, even under impossible total industrial effort, couldn't complete single new carrier until end of 1945 in best scenario. Each month war continued, disparity increased exponentially. Americans weren't just building ships, they were building entire fleets while Japan barely managed repairing battle damage on existing ships. Toyota wrote in his personal diary that night, entry preserved in post-war archives and now in National Diet Library in Japan. Finally completely understand why Admiral Yamamoto, most perspicacious man I knew, said before Pearl Harbor he could run wild for 6 months to a year, but after that guaranteed absolutely nothing. Thought it was strategic modesty or calculated pessimism. Wasn't. Was pure industrial mathematics. Americans don't just build warships faster than we can sink them through immense sacrifice. They build entire fleets faster than we can even plan operations to fight them. Each carrier we sink is completely empty tactical victory, vain celebration, because 3 new ones appear literally next month. We're not fighting rival navy. We're fighting industrial capacity that seems infinite. No conceivable naval strategy defeats this. Only 2 options remain: negotiated surrender or total and complete annihilation. Final statistics tell story of complete transformation of naval warfare through radical industrialization that made traditional strategy obsolete. 141 American aircraft carriers produced during World War II, 24 Essex-class fleet carriers, 9 Independence-class light carriers, 122 escort carriers of various classes. 18 Japanese aircraft carriers produced during entire war, including emergency conversions. Production rate at peak: 1 American carrier every 5 days versus 1 Japanese carrier every 18 to 30 months. Devastating final ratio: 141 to 18, equal to approximately 7.8 to 1 in absolute favor of United States. Carriers lost reveal even more extreme asymmetry. United States lost 12 of 141 produced, 8.5% loss rate. Japan lost 21 carriers, more than 100% of wartime production, because losses included pre-war fleet. United States finished World War II with 99 operational aircraft carriers. Many were immediately placed in reserve or scrapped, because there simply was no operational need or maintenance budget for such massive fleet in peacetime. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, wrote in his memoirs published 1947, "War in Pacific was decided not at Battle of Midway, although Midway was tactically crucial, but at Kaiser Shipyards in Vancouver and Richmond, in industrial arsenals of Detroit and Pittsburgh, in aircraft factories scattered across entire American continental territory." Japan began war with decisive qualitative and quantitative advantage in aircraft carriers, trained pilots, and operational experience. They finished war without single operational carrier, because it didn't matter how many ships they sank through immense sacrifice and courage of their aviators. We built ships faster than they could kill them. Much faster. This was industrial warfare in its purest and most brutal essence. Contrast with Japanese post-war reflections was devastating and self-condemning. Admiral Matome Ugaki, who served as Yamamoto's chief of staff and survived war, wrote in his final preserved diary entries, "We sank 12 American aircraft carriers during entire war through immense cost and irreplaceable pilots, precious aircraft, and desperately limited resources. Each sinking was celebrated as significant victory, bringing us closer to favorable negotiated peace. We thought we were winning war of attrition. We couldn't understand that they had 141. For each ship we sank, 3 new ones appeared within weeks. We didn't lose individual naval battles through incompetence or cowardice. We lost industrial production war that was mathematically decided before first battle was fought. We fought 20th century war with 19th century mentality. They fought with industrial mentality that made traditional naval strategy completely obsolete." Interrogations of Japanese naval officers captured during and after war revealed consistent theme of incredulity, transforming gradually into horrified comprehension of industrial disparity. Captain captured after Battle of Philippine Sea in June 1944 told interrogators, "We believed each carrier sunk was strategic victory because we knew carriers take years to build. They take years for us to build. We didn't understand that for you, carriers are produced like automobiles on assembly lines. When our pilots sank USS Lexington at Coral Sea, we celebrated for weeks. How long did it take to replace it? 4 new carriers were already under construction when Lexington sank. This isn't war. It's industrial production applied to destruction. Permanent legacy of American aircraft carriers transcends production numbers or battle statistics. They definitively proved that in modern total industrial warfare, replacement speed defeats enemy destruction capability, always and inevitably. Japanese strategy of progressive attrition war against American fleet, gradually wearing down numerical superiority through decisive battles and tactical sacrifice, failed catastrophically because Americans transformed attrition into abundance. Each ship lost was replaced by multiple new ones in weeks or months. Attrition worked backwards. More Japanese sank, more American ships appeared. Traditional logic of naval warfare was completely inverted by industrial capacity operating at scale and speed that admirals trained in Mahanian doctrine couldn't conceive as physically possible. Lesson was devastating in brutal simplicity. Doesn't matter how good your navy is, how experienced your pilots are, how superior your tactics are, If enemy can manufacture entire fleets faster than you can sink individual ships. Modern naval warfare isn't won by individually better ships or more brilliant admirals or even by better tactical doctrine. It's won by shipyards operating 24-hour shifts producing warships using automotive assembly line techniques. Japan fought 20th century war with 19th century strategic mentality, assuming resources and construction capacity were fixed and limited, that each ship lost was significant permanent loss. Americans fought with 20th century industrial mentality, where ships were mass-manufactured products, replaceable, abundant. This fundamental philosophical difference, more than any individual battle or tactical decision, decided Pacific War before first shot was fired. Only question was how long Japan would take to comprehend it was fighting not against navy, but against industrial capacity that made traditional naval strategy completely irrelevant and obsolete.